Hello there, let's get straight to it. I asked ChatGPT about Putin, and the subject is Putin because it is easier for me to fact check the AI outputs on this topic. I asked neutral questions and biased ones, and I asked the same question about 3 times. After all, this is a learning AI. In some of the questions, I asked for 500 words, in other I did not. And now it's time to analyze what I got back from ChatGPT. First, I focus on the nuts and bolts, sentences length, sentences components, and I use keywords to evaluate how responses to the same questions change. In the second part, I look more into the content of what the AI produced. To have some human text to compare the AI text to, I used a short bio of Mr. Putin available on the Encyclopedia Britannica, which I have extended to just over 500 words. The full text of questions and answer is available on a blog page, links below, and links to the references and the code notebook are listed also in the description below. My first question was a neutral one. I typed, write 500 words of Vladimir Putin bio. The AI correctly interpreted the word bio as biography, probably by looking at the preceding words which are classed as a NNP, or someone's name to you and me. It produced around 500 words as counted by Python Natural Language Toolkit. Of course, word type software disagrees a little. At first glance, the text looks rather good. This pie chart shows the distributions of nouns, adjectives, verbs, and adverbs. And if we compare it to the human bio, our benchmark here, it is not far off. Next, it is worth looking at the length of every sentence in the text, and in most cases, the average length of a sentence is around the 25 to 26 number of words. The human bio average is 24.61 words per sentence. In this context, the results are not far off. However, it is worth having a look at the standard deviation. In simple terms, the standard deviation is how far the length of each sentence is from the average length of the sentences in the text. It is quite tickling to see how the standard deviation grows from quite small for the first few outputs to quite a bit bigger for the later ones. ChatGPT text looks quite good, but still feels a bit off. And I think this graph gives an intuition of why that might be. Although the AI makes a good job of imitating human prose, the rhythm is still not quite right. Human prose is content-driven, i.e. the need to communicate ideas or knowledge takes priority over stylistic choices, at least in prose, and this is shown in the way the length of the sentences surges and dives in this graph. Overall, the AI texts tend to bunch in the middle. This is due to most AI models being designed to shy away from outliers or values that are far, far away from the mean. As an additional stylistic note, most human texts may have some longish sentences towards the end, but generally speaking will not conclude with a very long sentence. A short, punchy one that stays with the reader is generally the common choice. Long sentences are reserved for areas of text which are dense with concepts, generally around the center of the corpus. Alright, the easy stuff out of the way, let's look at the actual content. I will focus on the first response to the first instruction. Write 500 words, Vladimir Putin bio. It starts with Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born on October 7th, 1952 in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, Russia, which is correct. Then it follows with he grew up in a communal apartment and his father was a factory foreman. That is correct, and most bios mention some family background, but these tend to be longer bios, and generally the content is used to form a sort of background for the protagonist. Here instead it strings 3 facts: communal apartment, father foreman, graduation, one after the other, without drawing a connection or a reason for why these 3 facts have been chosen or have been mentioned. It is correct that after graduation Putin joined the KGB. The Soviet Union ended in 1991 with the birth of the Russian Federation. Some sources state that Putin retired from the KGB in 1990, other 1991. So I would say that the text is correct. In 1996, Putin was not appointed head of the FSB, however. In 1996, Putin moved to Moscow, and in 1998, he became the head of the FSB. It may help to know that between 1991 and 1996 he was first pro-rector of Leningrad State University and entered the political scene in St. Petersburg and became the deputy mayor of the city in 1994. It is correct that in 1999 he was appointed prime minister and in 2000 he was elected president. It is correct that due to constitutional limits, he could not run in 2008. Nonetheless, the next paragraph is a bit of a problem. It should be linked, and the link should run along the lines of, due to constitutional limits, Putin could not run in the 2008 presidential elections. Instead, his chosen successor, Dmitry Medvedev, ran for president, and on being elected, he appointed Putin as his prime minister. Next, it is true that Putin was re-elected president in 2012 and in 2018. And yes, he is the longest-serving leader of Russia since Stalin. What follows is what I call a bit of waffle. The content is commonly held views on Putin, but they're a bit thin on facts and references. A couple of facts are present in the next 4 paragraphs. The first one lists the conflicts in which Putin has been involved in, and I read, Putin has been involved in conflicts in Chechnya and Ukraine, and the Russian military has been involved in the Syrian civil war. Alright, let's unpack this a little. First, there are no dates. Secondly, there are a couple of conflicts missing. Next, it states that Putin has been president since 1999. Yes and no, he was elected president in 2000. He was prime minister in 1999. It got it wrong here, but got it right earlier in the text. Most of the other text outputs have the occasional wrong date and missing or incorrect fact. They all have a lot of opinion paragraphs, which are quite thin on dates, facts and references. Next, I thought it would be fun to check if ChatGPT is vulnerable to what I call pester power. So I submitted to it the following statement: Vladimir Putin, father of modern Russia. The statement is wrong. The commonly accepted father of modern Russia is Peter I, and I asked multiple times. This is the first output and this is the fifth. Both texts cite that he is significant. Both cite his multiple terms as president of Russia. The first text cites 3 major achievements and concludes with mixed opinions up to interpretation, which I read as a polite way to say no, he is not the father of modern Russia, which is correct. On the 5th iteration of the statement, it lists 4 achievements and concludes with played a major role in shaping Russia's international relations. It is up to interpretation, of course, but to me this last output is a bit weedier than the first one. But the best score on the cave into pester power scale is reached by the previous output, this one, which states some people consider him as the father of modern Russia, as his leadership has been marked by a strong emphasis on national pride, the re-establishment of Russia as a major global power, and the development of a more centralized and authoritarian government. And now, before you say, I did not change the word father for authoritarian despot. On the back of these outputs, I'd like to suggest to you that if I submit a biased request to the AI, chances are that after a few resubmissions, I will get the type of biased answer I'm looking for. So let's do just that. I requested 500 words bio for Vladimir Putin, then Vladimir Putin dictator, and then Vladimir Putin savior of Russia. Then checked if the distribution of some keywords I chose changes in the text the AI produced. Looking at the pie chart, the distributions of the keywords are different between the neutral bio and the biased bias, and again there are differences between the 2 biased bias. Let's be a bit naughty and just select the occurrences for strong, authoritarian, includes all versions of it, and power. Looking at this graph, the bio with the words dictator in it got top score on the keywords power and authoritarian, while the bio with the word savior scored the least on both strong and authoritarian keywords. So let's draw some conclusions. If you choose to use ChatGPT, you should be aware that you are trading accuracy and completeness for speed and convenience. It is up to you to know when the trade-off is worth it. And you should be aware that if you asked a misleading, biased question, eventually you might get a misleading, biased answer. But what about when you are the receiver of AI text? First, I would say that AI-generated text should be labelled as such. Anywho, let's play a game of Spot the Robot. Right, first thing first, put your proofreading and editing hat on and stop auto-correcting and auto-filling and read what is on the page, not what you expect to be there. The sentences follow each other, but they are not linked in a content-driven manner. They do not build into a path to somewhere. You have to autofill to create a logical progression. Paragraph breaks are formed on size, not content. So a statement belonging to the previous paragraph may end up in the next one. The length of the sentences is not always consistent with the content being presented, so the rhythm of the text is somewhat off, making reading harder. All the above said, AI technologies will continue to improve, so you are chasing a moving target. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again next month with the monthly update on opinion polls conducted in Russia by the Levada Center. Until then, have a wonderful time and bye-bye.